Hi, everyone, and welcome to AARP Arizona Desert Voices. I'm Dana Kennedy, and I'm really glad you're here with us today. This episode is all about taking care of your mind, body, and soul, the whole package, because wellness isn't just about one part of your life. Everything is connected. When you take care of your mind, your body responds. When you support your emotional well-being, you feel stronger in every other area. Joining me today is Lori Nissen, a trusted voice in wellness. Lori serves as the Family and Community Service Director at Banner Health, where innovations in program development support individuals and communities affected by neurodegenerative disorders. Today, and together we'll explore practical tips and introduce you to AARP's health and wellness resources like Staying Sharp, the BMI calculator, and the National Hearing Test, and local events designed just for you. So let's jump in. Let's start with the mind because the brain affects everything else we do. So, Lori, why is the brain so health critical as we age?
Oh, great question. I think brain health is essential, right? It really helps us to age in place. And as cognitive abilities change, we can be more vulnerable to decline. And a healthy brain function really ensures and elevates our opportunity for independence, which is what we all want. Um, you know, our greatest risk factor for dementia is actually age. But actually, there are a lot of modifiable risk factors. Some of the lifestyle habits that we have can really reinforce and strengthen neuroplasticity and really protect our brain's function. Both the choices you make in early life and later in life can really influence and shape how our brain functions as we age. And we like to talk about 8 pillars of brain health: staying active, eating nutritiously, getting enough sleep, exercise or motivating or using your brain, of course, connecting with friends and family, doing our best to relax and reduce stress as best we can, and also controlling and managing risk factors. If we have hypertension or diabetes or depression, managing those things in conjunction with our medical provider can be really important. And then there's always an opportunity to get involved in research so that we can continue to advance these opportunities for good brain health and wellness.
What is some of the research that is happening in this day and age? I hear a lot about the different researches that is available.
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities for research, both for prevention. We have an Alzheimer's prevention initiative looking at opportunities to prevent cognitive decline as we age. And then there's also lots of opportunity for those who are having changes in their memory to get involved in research so that we can find new interventions to slow or modify diseases of the brain like dementia.
So, can you tell me about some of I really am interested in how you might be able to prevent any type of dementia. And you talked about what was the first initiative that you talked about? Healthy aging prevention.
Yeah, I think really just controlling our risk factors. For example, there are a lot of new studies around managing hypertension effectively, for example. Also managing other progressive disorders like diabetes, even depression. That's a brain health issue, right? It affects the brain and how we think. So better caring for those conditions when we have them is really important rather than just ignoring them.
Got it. And if somebody was interested in participating in research, how do they go about doing that?
Well, I mean, if they wanted to participate in research with Banner, for example, we have a website which we can share. Also, there are clinicaltrials.gov. So there's the government lists a bunch of opportunities for people to get involved in research. We also have an Alzheimer's prevention initiative, andalznow.org, which is another opportunity to register to learn about research that's happening on a quarterly basis and opportunities to participate in prevention research if you're interested.
I'm interested in that. And what's involved? So you say something quarterly. How
Yeah,
much
the
time
Alzheimer's
investment?
Prevention Initiative actually has a quarterly newsletter, and they share
Okay,
opportunities for prevention research and also what's happening, progress that's being made.
that's great. And like, how much time does it take if you wanted to be able to participate? And do you need to live in Arizona to be able to participate in the research?
Not necessarily. Some of the
Okay.
prevention research is done digitally or remotely. And then there are certain studies that are happening that you need to participate in person.
That's interesting. I think sometimes people may hear about research and might be a little bit afraid.
Mhm.
So I think it's always important to be able to educate people that, you know, that there's a lot of opportunities to be involved in research, and some of it is just to be able to prevent it. So I think that's
Absolutely.
great information to share.
Yeah.
We talk so much about AARP's Staying Sharp program, and it's full of brain games, articles, and activities that are fun and actually help keep your mind active. And it's super easy to use. What's one simple thing listeners can do today for better mental health?
I think that one of the positive things about the pandemic is that it just really raised awareness for many of us that we need to have parity. We need to take care of our health and our mental health, and that many people struggle with mental health symptoms, and it's common. It's common. So there's opportunities for us to really take charge of those things. We want to try to use opportunities to relax and reduce stress. I know people say, "Oh, I can't get rid of my stress." We might not be able to eliminate it, but we can use techniques to reduce it or improve the way we cope with it. One thing that we don't talk about that much is even just thinking about our relationships. Do we set appropriate boundaries? Do we get asked to do a lot of different things to help other people and we want to help, but learning how to say no at times when
Yeah.
it feels overwhelming to you? And then the obvious ones that we talk about a lot are things like mindfulness. There's lots of free applications on that, as well as meditation. Even yoga or Tai Chi can really help us to reduce our stress. But even if we want to just do something simple, just taking 5 minutes to practice some slow, deep breathing. I think just intentional breathing can help us calm our nervous system, reduce stress hormones, improve our focus, manage our emotions, and just help ground us. I think there's lots of opportunities, but one is just by using the 4 to 6 method of breathing, where all you do is just take a deep breath through your nose for about 4 seconds. We'll try that. Hold it in for a moment and then let it out on 6 counts. That in itself can help relax you. And if you feel like you can take just a few minutes, you could do that exercise on your own 5 times, and that in itself will help you feel a bit more calm and grounded.
I love that. And I will tell you that I practiced that during the pandemic. And I have a stone that I keep at my desk,
Oh,
and it says breathe. And I think sometimes we think that, there's nothing we can do to release the stress when we're feeling, really anxious. And I think we, heard a lot about people experience anxiety during the pandemic.
absolutely.
And I love that 5 minutes is something we can all do. And I think that, it's really important. And I just know that anytime I go walk into a doctor's office and they want it, the first thing they do is take your blood pressure. And as soon as I walk into that doctor's office, the first thing I do is breathe, because I know if I don't do that, my blood pressure is going to be elevated and they're going to get an inaccurate, blood pressure for me, because I have that, what do they call it? White coat syndrome.
Exactly.
And I think that, if they take my blood pressure and I feel like it's not accurate, I just say, give me a second. And I take a couple of deep breaths and then I let it out. And then have them take it again. And it will almost always be lower after I just take a few deep breaths. So I think that it's often something we overlook, but it's actually something that we really can control. So really great to remember that, just a 5-minute breathing is something we can all do.
I think
So,
so. And I think what's nice about breathing is that, as you described, it's portable. You can do it
mm,
anywhere. I've had family caregivers who couldn't leave the person they're taking care of, but they could step into their room or bathroom or even out into their car with the air conditioning and just take some deep breaths and take that time for themselves. I've had other people say they're in a rush to get to work and they park, and in the parking garage, before they get into the office, take some deep breaths.
mhm. That's really great information. And, just if people want to explore more, AARP also has a ton of online events and workshops focused on mental and cognitive wellness. And you just have to hop onto aarp.org and you'll find a bunch of options. You just have to type in the zip code of where you live, and it will give you in-person events as well as online activities as well. Um, so let's talk about the body for a moment. We all know that physical health plays a huge role in how we feel day to day. What's your advice for staying active without making it feel overwhelming?
I think, don't set a huge mountain that is going to be difficult to climb, right? Just start small. Start with 5 or 10 minutes a day of movement that you can do that is manageable for you so it doesn't feel overwhelming. You could just add on to activities you already do. If you are running errands, you could park a little bit farther away and walk to your destination. You could walk if you're having a phone conversation, either outdoor or inside. You could also, if you're watching a television program or listening to an audiobook, you could do some stretching. You could even use a very inexpensive pedal bike that just fits right in front of your chair, just to get a little bit of exercise. I think the key is to make it manageable and as enjoyable as possible. Play a favorite song, listen to a podcast like this one, or try to exercise with a friend if that makes you feel more comfortable and makes it more pleasurable for you. And don't set really severe expectations. Don't give yourself a lot of pressure. Just give yourself some credit for any movement that you do. And then if it's going well, build on it and just focus on how it feels. I find for me that the exercise is really important physically, but it also really helps me manage stress. It helps me feel more like my emotions are in check and manageable and regulated. So, kind of notice how you feel while you're doing or right after exercise. That sometimes can be some positive reinforcement.
I know that you're a dog lover, and I'm also a dog lover. And, in November, I was, thrust into being a full-time caregiver for my husband, and he's doing great now. But October, November was a very stressful time, and we've always been very active people, and I went into it thinking that I would have time every single day to go and go to the gym or do my own activity, and I quickly realized that my time was not as important as what we needed to do for him to get him where he needed to be for his appointments. But what I did find time is what I call my Kona time, and that is taking my dog for a walk every day. And sometimes, you know, we may not want to do it for ourselves, but we'll do it for somebody else. And for me, it was making sure I've got, a senior dog, and he used to be very active, and he's not as active as he used to be, but I still know that he loves to get outside and just do his thing, and so I made my activity during that time is giving it to Kona. So I made sure that I was able to take Kona out for a walk sometime during the day. And what do you do for activity? Just curious.
Oh, I do lots of different things. I like to go to the gym. I like to walk outside in Arizona, and most of the year, I love to hike and ride my outdoor bicycle. I like to lift weights. I've found that, as I mentioned, it really has been an incredible stress manager for me. And that's what we say about brain health, right? What's good for the heart is good for the brain.
Yeah.
So you're getting kind of that full advantage. And for me, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I feel so much better after just a short, brief exercise period. It really helps me just feel like I can cope better.
Yeah. And I think we all, realize that, sometimes some periods in life it's really easy to get exercise, and other times in life it's a challenge. You've got to carve that out. So, I
And you
think
have
that
to give yourself some grace. If you're, taking care of a loved one and you can't get to the gym for an hour, that's okay. If you can get outside for 10 minutes, or if you can do some gentle stretches, excuse me, to manage your stress, that in itself is really an achievement. And you just have to pat yourself on the back and give yourself a little space.
exactly. I really appreciate that reminder. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing workout. Even a quick daily walk, as I said before, can make a difference. And if you're curious about where you stand health wise, AARP has a BMI calculator. It's a quick way to get a snapshot of your numbers. And we've also got a lot of healthy recipes, fitness videos, and other tools that make it easier to take those small steps. And another question for you, Lori, is what's one simple nutrition tip you recommend for brain health?
One good thing to think about is trying to get some dark leafy greens in your diet if you can. Things like spinach, kale, broccoli. I'm more of a broccoli person myself, just to really provide your brain with some of those essential nutrients so that it can function at its highest level. There's some data that shows it can actually slow cognitive decline and actually protect some of those brain cells. These nutrients can, really combat some of the damage. And also you might be hearing about inflammation. It can fight inflammation, which can also lead to poor brain health and other things. So just try adding something like a handful of spinach to one of your salads or a smoothie, or incorporate broccoli into your lunch or dinner. And it's even better if you can pair it with kind of a healthy fat like some olive oil or avocado, because that leads to better absorption. So I think if you could just sneak in some of those green vegetables, the leafy greens can help you delay brain aging, which I think is not too difficult to do.
I know I often think, am I eating too much? If I make a salad and then, I have my protein and then I got to have that broccoli or asparagus, I always try to make sure I've got some green on my plate, at dinner. But then my favorite tip for breakfast is I love berries.
Mm.
I love fresh berries. So I know everybody in the office, it's pretty much the same breakfast every single day, but I start with berries because I read that berries are really good for you. And then I mix it in with, high protein yogurt. And that's my breakfast. And
That's a
it's been,
great tip. Lots of antioxidants. But I think you look at what's best for you. I mean, if you're someone that drinks mostly coffee and soda, try switching out a couple of those sodas for water, because hydration is also really important for your brain. So I think there are lots of small things you can do to improve your nutrition and health and wellness. And we don't always think about nutrition as water, but water is critical to living well, both physically and cognitively.
yeah, it really is. And we often forget about it. And I know that I made a conscious decision, years ago to get rid of Diet Coke. I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke in college. And then I started reading about how it wasn't all that great for me. And then I went ahead and, switched it out to like iced tea. And then I found, sparkling waters, like flavored sparkling water a long time ago at Trader Joe's. And I would just buy the big jug, jug of it, and that's how I got rid of the Diet Coke habit
Soda.
that I had.
That's a good tip for transitioning out of, carbonated sodas to switch to a sparkling water. Great idea.
Yeah, that's what I did. It worked for me, but I know a lot of people love their soda, but you know even if they switch it out just ever occasionally, a good way to switch it out. So that's a good tip. And I think, also it's an easy one. And honestly, many of us can make a switch, starting today. So let's get into the soul, because emotional wellness and connection are such a big part of living healthy, meaningful life. Um, How do relationships impact our brain health as we age?
That's so interesting because over the last several years, there's been a strong connection between brain wellness and social connections. So we know that maintaining those social connections or making new ones are really vital for brain health. Social connection can really help us function better cognitively. It can lower our risk or delay the onset of dementia. And social exercise is almost like brain exercise. It helps us feel connected to other people, which reduces a lot of our stress. It can foster and promote neural connections and enhance memory and thinking as we age. We know that relationships really do have a connection to our health and wellness. You've heard about social isolation and how that can be very detrimental to someone's emotional and physical well-being. People who stay connected have and have more active social lives have better brain function, and they reduce their risk for brain deterioration or dementia. We know that those relationships also help manage our stress. Think about when you were having a really hard day and you had something that happened that you were very upset about, and you talked to somebody about it, it seemed lighter. It maybe didn't seem as significant, or if it did, you might have just had a relief that you were able to offload it off your shoulders. And then mental stimulation, socializing, makes you think. You pay attention to nonverbal cues. You have to recall information. When you engage in the conversation, you're really listening and actively training your brain. So I think there are so many benefits to social connections. And the most obvious one is, of course, to get together with a friend. But if you can't, and you mentioned the pandemic, so many of us didn't because we were worried about safety. But you can stay connected through messages or through a phone call or through a video chat like we're doing today. Those are all opportunities to stay connected and to help support your brain health, emotional, and physical wellness.
That's a great tip to make sure that we nurture those relationships, because we do see that over and over. Staying connected makes everything better. And that's one reason we encourage people to check their hearing regularly. When hearing becomes difficult, people sometimes pull back, and we don't want that. So AARP's National Hearing Test makes early detection easy.
Yeah, I'm
And
glad you mentioned that, Dana, because actually that's a risk factor for dementia. So if you're noticing hearing impairment or change in yourself or your loved one, get it checked out and find a remedy.
agreed. It's really important. And I think that, AARP has actually advocated to make, hearing aids, more cost effective. So, there are more ways to be able to get hearing aids if you do need them. So that's really important. And what's one simple way we can nurture our soul today?
I think nurturing our soul means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but really, I think it means, having a sense of purpose, experiencing or engaging in something religiously or spiritually or even mindfully practicing, just a way to hone and support and cultivate peace within. I think that's the most important message. And there's a lot of data around the fact that it can really be protective on brain health and wellness. Spiritual activities can really enhance someone's cognitive resilience, so make them more resilient, slow down age-related cognitive decline, and even reverse some of the structural brain changes that can happen as we age to prevent or at least delay the onset of memory change. And it really is about just feeling and being well and fostering inner peace. That can be done a lot of ways. I mean, for some people, you mentioned your dog. I mean, spending quality time with a pet, nurturing that love can really be incredibly important. Finding ways to connect emotionally in other ways can be useful. If you can be creative, whether you create art or design flowers, or maybe even just journal to be more in touch with how you're feeling and your purpose and feeling emotionally connected. There's lots of other activities that I think are pretty well known about spirituality and nurturing the soul. Things like um, mindfulness, connection, or even just quiet reflection.
Yeah, I think also, we all have, or many of us have smartphones. And I think that often we forget that our smartphones are actually a phone. And sometimes we forget that how important it is to just be able to pick up that phone and call somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and especially somebody who you think, would really benefit from that call, because both people benefit from that call. I know my dad
Absolutely.
loves it when I call him, even if it's just for a quick 5 minutes. It boosts his spirits to know that, I'm thinking about him, and then I reach out and call him. And don't send a text, actually, he hears my voice.
Right. And on the flip side, if you're using your phone mostly for social media, one way to kind of nurture your soul would be to take a time out from your phone. So think about mealtime or another time of day, especially before bed, just putting your phone away, actually, and just kind of giving yourself that time and space to breathe, to think, to kind of nurture the soul. Sometimes technology can get in the way of that.
It's so true. And I'm glad that you reminded us all that sometimes we do need to put that phone down and be present. And it doesn't have to just be present with a person, but present with ourselves. And we don't need to just needlessly scroll. So that's a really good tip. So today we talked about how the mind, body, and soul work together, and how taking small steps in any of these areas can make a big difference. If you want to explore the resources we mentioned, head over to aarp.org/health living. You'll find tools like Staying Sharp, the BMI calculator, the National Hearing Test, plus upcoming local AARP health events you can join. A big thank you to Lori Nissen for being here and sharing such great insight. And thank you for spending time with us today. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close this out, Lori?
No, I think just take small steps to help nurture your emotional, your cognitive, and your physical health really can go a long ways. And I just want to thank you, Dana, for this delightful conversation. I hope it's been valuable to your listeners.
I know that it will be. So again, this is Dana Kennedy with Lori Nissen with Banner. And take good care of yourself, because your health truly matters. And until next time, we hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you.